Is broker-to-broker compensation dead?
Broker-to-broker on the MLS is dead. Prohibited, forever, illegal, banned, deleted. By the way, that's the end of your career. Again, if everyone read the original litigation, it was an accusation by plaintiffs' attorneys, sellers that sold homes. The commission was in a forced, coerced way where the seller was not able to participate in the negotiation. I truly think this is what's best to protect the industry from a bunch of, I'll say it, ambulance-chasing attorneys who don't give a goddamn about consumers.
We have a rock star with us, a serial entrepreneur, a legendary real estate agent who's doing hundreds and hundreds of units, and now the CEO of eXp Realty and an industry leader, Mr. Leo Pareja. Good morning to you. And
Good morning, sir.
and I wanted to first see if we could lay something to rest, because in a lot of the posts that I've been kind of seeing and hearing and people responding to posts that I've, put out there, is broker-to-broker compensation dead?
That's a great question. And let me answer it technically and then what I think.
Yeah.
So broker-to-broker is allowable under the NAR settlement. It's paragraph 32. So I talked about this in detail in the Tom Ferry one, and I do like to quote paragraph and verse so people can actually go to it. So paragraph 19 of the FAQs, if you Google NAR plus FAQ, it comes right up. Paragraph 19 is where broker-to-broker on the MLS is dead. And it's probably uses the most extreme, clear words in the English language. Prohibited, forever, illegal, banned, deleted. Look it up. It probably has 11 of those words. And where I'm obsessed is the enforceability. Because, by the way, that paragraph dictates all of the nasty fines you guys are starting to see at scale. And in those posts, it's all in there. $2,500, $5,000. One MLS says by the third time, it's $15,000, and you're suspended from the MLS for up to a year.
Wow.
By the way, that's the end of your career. If you don't have access to the marketplace, you're done. Then you scroll down to paragraph 32, where broker-to-broker is allowable off the MLS with 2 clicks, no IDX data, and so on and so on. And so that's where about 5 weeks ago, Holly and I sat down and said, we need to make a business decision to protect our people, right? And so where we took direction and see where the puck is going is that California Association of Realtors about mid-June said, okay, per the settlement agreement, let's create a broker-to-broker forum. And then the DOJ sent a cease and desist. It was not like, hey, oh, by the way, it was a written document that said, don't do that. And then the California Association of Realtors said, okay, we're not going to do that. Again, for the folks that aren't aware, CAR has the most agents in the country, right? It's California, Texas, and Florida. It's 30 to 40% of every agent that's licensed in America belongs to one of those 3 states just by human population size. They've been very clear that that it needs to be completely decoupled. Again, we made a business choice to say, if you're not allowed to do it on the MLS, how about you just don't do it off the MLS, comma. And this is where I lost everybody. And I'll speak about it till I'm blue in the fence. At the same time, we rolled out mechanisms, forums, training to do seller to broker. Seller to broker. The big difference, and again, I'll say it as many times as I have to, and all the forums and all the podcasts and all the places. What I think has fundamentally changed is that, again, if everyone read the original litigation, it was an accusation by plaintiffs' attorneys, sellers that sold homes, where the commission was in a forced, coerced way where the seller was not able to participate in the negotiation. So what we now have is our forms and the way we teach it, and the way, by the way, Next Home and James Dwiggs teaches it, and Anthony Lamacchia Real Estate teaches it. And again, I won't say their names to put them on blast, but oh, by the way, half of the independents in this country in the last 2 weeks have rolled out paperwork to match ours and training to match ours. And I know because I'm on the phone giving them advice and coaching them and giving away our stuff, because I truly think this is what's best to protect the industry from a bunch of, I'll say it, ambulance chasing attorneys who don't give a goddamn about consumers or the industry. They're just looking to make big paychecks. So what we're trying to do is keep the agent at the center of the universe, which is our business policy, right? To make the most agent-centric company in the world. And we're doing that by keeping the consumer in the best, most clear, most articulate, most transparent form, right? So we wrote agreements that were in plain English that could be understood and interpreted by someone who's not a lawyer, and made it as clear as possible. So our listing agreement is, if I'm hiring you to sell my home, this is the fee for selling the seller representation side of it. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, these are the options you have to market your home. You can offer seller broker compensation day one, off the MLS, 2 clicks, and follow all the local rules in place. You can do that just like broker to broker. We're just doing it as seller to broker. But it's a separate conversation. It's a separate form. Oh, by the way, you can also negotiate at the time of contract, which was one of the goals of the agreement. Or the third option that's very real, per the settlement rules, is the seller doesn't even have to offer it. But guess what? The buyer can ask for it. And that's the distinction here. And this is where, and again, you caught me in a mood this morning because I read the stuff too. It takes a lot of self-control not to become a keyboard warrior myself. But the reality is, this is not about the listing agent or the buyer's agent, guys. This is about the buyer and the seller negotiating terms that they want. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the seller's net proceeds and the buyer's net proceeds to the closing table.
Yeah. So as you're speaking, it makes me think about all the conversations we've had with our coaching clients and our consulting business, and also with our organization at EXP, is that the mechanism with which money is flowing has changed.
The mechanism that we grew up with, I've been licensed for 23 years, is deleted.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the unilateral offer of compensation, which was a requirement of the subscriber agreement to belong to an MLS, right? And many, many years ago, a lot of them switched it to like $1 or $10 or a minimum that was basically zero. But it literally wasn't zero in most MLSs. It was like a super low monetary $1 or $10 fee. That field and that behavior and the enforceability, right? Because what would happen prior to August 17th, somebody offered X percent. It was an issue at the closing table. The listing agent and the buyer's agent agreed to kick in some money. The deal closed. Guess what? You guys forgot to get both brokers to sign off on it. You let the deal close, and then it went to arbitration at the MLS, and it was enforced by the MLS because that was part of the rules of engagement. That whole mechanism is gone. It is completely gone. And so I think you just nailed it perfectly, in the sense where when people are all up in arms, I'm like, guys, look, I'm not saying that I think the rules are better, but what I do know is that life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to them. Yeah. If these are the new rules of engagement, if the tools given to us to participate in these marketplaces, which are the MLSs, no longer exist, and by the way, no longer exist, if you try to keep them alive, they're going to basically render you out of the business through fines and suspension. Like, the hardest part for me is like, look, I'm quite opinionated about the actual case and how it was defended and the story played and all that stuff, but that doesn't change the outcome.
Yeah, I wrote down, hope is a beautiful word, but it's a very poor business strategy. So just going with what's true and what I've been sharing, and it sounds like we're completely in alignment, is that the conversation is like 99% the same. I may have to take a little bit of detour to explain the pros and cons, let's say on the listing side, of offering compensation instead of getting defensive and then letting the consumer choose what would be in their best interest. The documentation and how we document the conversation is what is changing. And the reason why it's changing is the mechanism with which the money flows is changing. Is that accurate?
100%. And the insult to injury is it's almost just the words we say, because the mechanism on the HUD-1 will actually, or the settlement statement would look exactly the same, right? The seller always gave a credit to the buyer, right? It flows that way. So but it's important. And I talk about this concept a lot. Like in psychology, there's all kinds of documented stuff that when there is a lack of information, that's when the brain goes the most crazy, right? Because it tries to fill in gaps. Like the brain loves comparables. And so if there's like an absence of information, you kind of come up with these crazy scenarios in your head. But the second you can tie it to something you're familiar with, it calms down. And so I've done that for us. And I say, it's the listing side. We're now all listing agents. Period. End of discussion. Right. And I give you guys the comparable. It's like, imagine going to a listing appointment and telling the seller, okay, the seller asks, how much are you going to charge me? And you say, we'll see when the offer shows up. Realistically, that's what we've been doing on the buy side, right? Can you imagine showing a townhouse in a master plan community, all built the same year, same model? One could have been offering X, the other could have been offering Y, and then the other one could have been offering Z. You put those people in your car for 6 months, spent the same amount of gas, time, energy, and your final compensation as the buyer's agent was dictated by the listing agent,
yep.
Right? So now it's a different world where you're going to agree on who's paying what and how. And there's a start date and end date, and there's clear spelling of who's doing what for what fee.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've shared with agents as the way that we built our business was through listing property in high volume. We did 2,000 transactions, 80% on the listing side. And what I'm aware of is, as listing agents, we've been having this conversation forever. We go in, we demonstrate value. Here's our services that we're going to be providing. Here's the outcomes that we produce. Here's what it costs. I need you to authorize this agreement. And the only reason why we haven't, done the same thing on the buy side is it wasn't mandatory. I would never put a listing in the multiple listing service without documentation. And now the same is true on the other side. So I guess my question to you would be is, how do you perceive that challenge, let's say for agents? Because I know kind of statistically across the country, the vast majority of agents, they're heavy buy side, probably 60, 70% of their transactions are on the buy side. So for those agents who have never had to do a formal presentation, demonstrate value, and then ask for money, what would you say to those agents? What do they need to do separate from the paperwork? Because what I'm aware of is a lot of people are getting caught up in the paperwork piece, but like, what is the skill-based piece that they need to be focused on to continue to not only, survive in this environment, but thrive in it?
What I think we'll now see on the buy side is variability based on supply and demand, based on affordability, based on business model, based on sophistication of the customer. Like, not all like if I were to buy a house, I'm a more sophisticated buyer than a first-time home buyer who needs their hand held through a down payment assistance, which, by the way, I think this settlement unfairly hurts first-time home buyers and LMI buyers and people that need down payment assistance. Like, they're the ones that need the most fiduciary responsibility and representation. That was very loud throughout the process. But back to your original question, because I wanted to make sure I hit that, you're actually statistically correct. Like, at scale, publicly traded companies, we're 60-40, 60% buyers, 40%. And I have strong opinions about that. One is skill-based listing agents concentrate, right? Like, my stats were almost identical to yours. I'd sell 400 to 600 homes, and it was 80 to 90% listing sided on the year. And I think buyer agency is less intimidating because you don't have to have this requirement on presentation as well as dollars invested, right? Statistically, according to NAR, it's like $2,500 to list a house day one, between photos, brochures, all of the upfront expenses that come with. And that's assuming you're not doing staging and curb appeal and like above and beyond kind of like love service stuff. Versus a buyer pre-August 17th, we met at an open house. We kind of hit it off. There was like, an affinity, chemistry, whatever you call it. You went and saw a house. They kind of liked you. You were kind of their agent until they either bought or ghosted you or you got tired of it. Right. And so I've been in this business a very, very long time. It's literally the ask, right? When you look at a seller and say, I'm going to do X and you're going to pay me Y, there's a ton of variability. A lot of it's business model and volume versus less volume, but also it's confidence and competence and being able to articulate what you're doing, right? Like, there's a really interesting poll that happened that consumers think the average buyer's agent spends about 15 hours helping them, but it's closer to 80 or $100, right? So to your question, it's like, if I was an agent right now and what I'm going to spend the next year, you guys are going to get tired of me here talking about it. It's like, do you have a presentation? Can you articulate what it is you do and how you do it? Does that describe the 105 things that the buyer's agent does according to NAR per transaction? And oh, by the way, that same presentation needs to be part of your listing presentation.
Yeah. So what I wrote down is like I'm seeing it real time. So you mentioned like variability, supply and demand, market dynamics. I have a a one-on-one coaching client in the Northeast. He had 16 offers on a property. The one that was accepted, the buyer's agent lowered their professional fee to 1.5 points. So it's interesting because as a listing agent, I imagine, we used to, when we were in multiple offer situations, we would say, hey, let's say 10 offers came in. My staff would put all 10 on a document. We would present all 10, of course. We'd pull out the top 3 based on price and terms. Now it's going to be price, terms, and professional fee. And that's just market dynamics working. When there's a lot of demand, then you can, function in that way. And to your point, in 2008 and 9, I remember condo conversions offering 6, 7, 8, 9% just to bring buyers because the supply was so high. So I guess for those agents, because I'm seeing a lot of agents like thinking that, oh, I can just change what's in my buyer broker's agreement. Now, you mentioned, I've heard you say on other kind of interviews you've done, that technically you can, but you would be very, very careful of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And again, I also reserve the right to change my mind based on new information, right? Like if you guys heard what I said on March 18th, I said, hey, I actually read this thing cover to cover. The only thing I care about is the enforceability.
Yes.
Right? I had a broker's license in Virginia. I had a broker's license. I still have a broker's license in Virginia. I had one in DC, Maryland. My best example I always tell folks is there's a rule in the Virginia Department of Occupational Regulatory, DPR, that if I break, it's up to $1,000 fine. If I drive over the river into Maryland and break the same rule, it's up to a year in prison. Same rule, same occupation, different states, different interpretations, different enforceability. Why I mention that is, again, all these rules, it was like, okay, well, what happens if we break these rules, these new rules that were set up? If it's $100 fine, I think most people would say, okay, cost of doing business, not losing my license, I'm not getting kicked out of the MLS, right? But they're very severe and very real. On the buy side, because I just spent the whole time talking about the listing side. On the buy side, let me tell you what some of these MLSs are telling us. And this is where it's going to get painful and nuanced, and why I'm calling it the messy middle, and I keep calling it the messy middle. It's because MLSs are changing their mind on a daily basis, right? We've seen a couple MLSs, most notably Kansas City, right? The one where Mr. Ketchmark lives, create their listing agreement to now be very similar to ours. No broker-to-broker compensation. They literally said, hey, we're not telling you how to do your business, but we're watching the commentary from the DOJ and the settlements, and we just don't think we're going to put this out in our paperwork, right? And I've seen many, many other associations update their stuff constantly. But the penalty to the buy side not having the buyer agency signed executed prior to touring property, which again is, philosophically, I think it should be before purchase contract, not before opening the door. But my feelings don't matter. I have had MLSs tell us that, first of all, it's on us as the broker to audit the file. If I don't have the signed touring agreement prior to, at the time of closing, Aaron, do you know what I'm supposed to do with the buyer agent commission? I'm supposed to wire it back to the seller. I'm supposed to wire it back. So one of the very first things that weekend, March 16th, March 17th, that I wanted to prepare myself for, and I asked a lot of the attorneys, I'm like, hey, if I were an agent, what I would say, this is my minimum. And then like anything I get above this, I'm going to like, that's, mine. And they said, absolutely not. We cannot have variability. Right. So what we know as of right now is that whatever the fee is cannot go up variably, but you are allowed to reduce it. Now, again, the information that I have as of, what is today's date? Since this will live forever, August 26th at 10 a.m. East Coast Standard Time, is what we've been told is that the buyer agency agreement can be amended, like an amendment, with buyer and buyer agent signatures, right? A meeting of the minds of a written agreement. So let me give you an example. You ask for X on a agreement, and there is a bonus offer, new construction, motivated seller example you just talked about. That can be received, but it needs to be amended and agreed on by both parties. What could happen in that moment is another point of negotiation, which, by the way, is the
point
what the plaintiff's attorneys wanted to see, right? What could happen is like, you've been awesome. It's yours. Oh my God, thank you. I really needed that. It's mine. Let's split it. Again, it's a point of negotiation between the consumer and the agent.
Yeah, and just being open to having that conversation. And on the listing side, we were just very upfront and forward, and we had to be transparent with regards to the money. And on the buy side, we really just haven't had to do that. And now it's what's required, is to be very open and transparent and give people options. What I've been sharing, and I'm curious to see like how what your perspective is I'm not convinced that it's like reasonable to imagine somebody that you just met, particularly on the buy side, when they're very accustomed to it being speed to lead. Just show me the property. Like, hey, we need to come in and have this formal thing, and then you need to sign with me for an extended period of time. So what I've been sharing with agents is like, hey, if my grandma called me right now and said she wanted to go take a look at a property, she'd have to sign a buyer broker's agreement, right? I don't think it's a reasonable expectation for us. We just met each other to end into a long-term agreement. So how about we do this? We'll authorize this shorter one that's for like 5 days. We'll take a look at this property and perhaps, a couple others. And then if it makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident, we determine together as a team that it's a match and we want to work together. You can come into the office. We'll do a formal presentation and discuss, a formal buyer broker's agreement. How does that sound? Like, do you think that's like a reasonable approach?
I mean, that matches exactly to what we rolled out, right? So that we rolled out a single property and then a non-exclusive buyer agency agreement within like 14 days, right? And it was because I put on my agent hat, just like you guys did. Said, okay, speed to lead, portal or sign call says I'm in the area, I want to be there in an hour, and then here's my pre-approval. Sticking an 8 or 12 page, 14 page, whatever your state wrote, exclusive, we're married buyer agency agreement is just not going to happen, right? It adds a ton of friction to the transaction. I remember when I was coached, one of my favorite, probably not appropriate sayings was like, what's the worst thing about an asshole client? If they like you and refer you to their asshole friends and family.
That's right.
Like, you have to have chemistry with the people that you work with, and it has to be mutual respect on both ends, right? There are people you're not going to want to represent because they don't value your time, energy, and skill sets, right? So it should be, and again, based on the rules, I'm not saying it should because this is what I believe, but this is based on the rules that I have. It should probably be a sequence or a spectrum of like, okay, first time, not too much commit. Hey, we hit it off. You need to meet all the decision makers, which is what it should have happened from the beginning. Then either we meet at a second property or let's meet at the office or a Starbucks. And then and back to your thing about what you need to be focused on is you have to be prepared, articulate, be able to present and explain it all. And then that's where the world goes.
Yeah. And then when you kind of walking through logically is then the next step. Let's say you guys do hit it off. Now they come into the office, and just like you would prepare for an actual listing presentation, to your point, I have to have some materials that I'm going to present. I have to have a clear value proposition that I'm going to articulate, and I'm going to have to talk about the money. And then what I'm going to do is it requires that I be clear on how I can get compensated, right? So one is that don't say the listing agent, the seller may provide it. And if they do, great. The second option is they may provide it, a portion of it. Now, if they do that, then we're going to negotiate as much as possible to try to get the other portion taken care of. If for some reason we're not able to do that, then you would be responsible for the difference. And then the third option is on the outside chance that the seller doesn't provide anything. We negotiate, we do our best, we're in a multiple offer situation, then one of two things will happen. The first is I'm never going to stand in the way of you getting your dream home. So if you don't want your agent representing you, fighting for you tooth and nail, looking out for your best interests, looking out for terms and conditions that are favorable for you, and you want to deal directly with a listing agent, I'll politely bow out, right? And all I ask in return is, maybe you refer me like 2 or 3 clients in the next 12 months. The second option is if you do want your agent to fight for you tooth and nail, look out for your best interests, negotiate terms and conditions that are favorable for you, then you would be responsible for the difference. Are you clear on how I get compensated? And they're like, yeah, great. Would you like for me to represent you? Yes, I need you to authorize this buyer broker's agreement. Like, that's it, right?
So I was listening extremely intently to what was coming out of your mouth.
Good.
Because one of the very, very clear things out of the agreement is if you utter the words, I'll do it for free, you are doing it for free. You're not allowed to collect money. So again, details matter. I read the full 180 pages.
Yeah.
If you actually say, if I can't get a fee, I'll do it for free, you are now running the risk of doing it for free. And what you said was very clear, which was, I will get out of the way and you can be an unrepresented buyer and deal directly with the listing agent, which, also has all kinds of caveats and not to be underestimated. I'm not encouraging it. Because an unrepresented party, the true fiduciary responsibility is rendered to the seller, right? So outside of late material defects, I don't got to tell you anything.
I'm curious what your position is on that, because let's say as a listing agent, somebody says, yeah, I just want you, I don't want you to represent me, nothing. And you're like, okay, and you write up the agreement.
I'll give you my strong opinions and our company policy. Our company policy is we allow dual agency where rendered legal by law. If anybody asks me, how do I view the business and rules? I say legal, ethical, and enforceable, right? Those are the few guardrails I give you guys. And outside of that, we are a platform that allows real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want to build, right? So that could be you have different business models, and we support them as long as they're legal, ethical, and I can enforce them in a court of law. You have to be super careful when you're rendering services to more than one party, right? The analogies are a bunch, right? Would you use the same divorce attorney for a divorce? Or there's all kinds of things where it's for separate representation is very key. And then anytime you're an unrepresented party, right? I understand that you could still do it all right and represent the seller purely to the best of your ability. The second the other party doesn't have proper representation, they can, and I'm being careful with the words I'm saying, can say that they were hurt. And then it's up to you to defend that you didn't hurt, right? One of the things about this country is anyone can sue anyone for anything they want. And if you find yourself in that situation, document, right? Take note. If you're representing someone who's an unrepresented party, or dual agency, which as an agent, I tried to never do. And I'm again, different. I didn't say that as a COVXP. I said that as the number one KW team in the world and someone who sold 4,000 homes, how I behaved. You are allowed to do what your state allows you to legally, ethically, and enforceably. Just have a ton of documentation. And oh, by the way, I keep calling it the messy middle because there will be a moment in time where we're at our new normal. And all of this seems as ridiculous as when we used to wipe down our groceries during COVID. Yeah. There'll just be a new way of doing things. And all of this is what do we, I don't even remember how we did it before. Right. But until we get there, there's going to be a lot of breakage.
Yeah. And along those lines, I know you're a very kind of linear thinker and you're thinking second, third, fourth level consequences. So we're at this juncture, in your mind, as the CEO of the largest independent brokerage on the planet, what are you thinking about second, third level down the road that most people are not really paying attention to?
I think most people are kind of stuck in the moment and then they don't zoom out far enough. Again, I go to a parallel, either commercial real estate or sellers, because I think it's both behavior. One is in commercial real estate, this is very common where you negotiate your fee, you get it up front, it's either paid or financed into the deal or part of the deal. And then, unfortunately, a small percentage of it ends up in litigation. So there's a really interesting parallel right there. But then I go back to the seller data and I focus on the FSBO data, right? FSBOs have existed since I've been in the real estate industry, and just about everybody watching this. They tend to be between 5 to, on the high end, 12, 13% of all seller transactions in a given year. And from the information I have, it literally is a parallel to the amount of inventory in the market. Meaning in 2008, it was the smallest. In 2021, it's the highest, right? Supply demand. But what's more interesting about that data set is what happens. X percent say, I'm going to go FSBO or attempt it. And only about 20% of the original group end up executing, right? And a couple interesting things is 70, 80% of them go, oh my God, this is a full-time job. Let me hire a professional, which it is. And some of the more interesting anecdotal information I've read, which again, I can't quote because I don't have it in front of me, but I've over the years have read that the ones that actually close the transaction, the 20% that actually close FSBO, end up in litigation at 3 or 4x the rate that the ones that are represented by 2. Because I've said it from stages. I think part of what agents do is keep both parties from killing each other, right? It's highly emotional. Lots of dollars involved. Um, but this is my prediction, right? Is I think there will be a percentage of human beings who say, I read everything. I'm going to do it myself. I don't need you. And they're literally going to go to open houses. Um, and they're going to find themselves in very unique situations they've never been in. Like, they're like, okay, I want to buy the house. And the listing agent's going to say, great, have your agent call me. Like, I don't have an agent. Like, okay, send me a contract. They're like, how do I do that? I'm like, I don't know, call a attorney. Like, like, like there's things like back on March 18th that I said, I'm like, who's going to do what? Who's on first? How are we going to enforce this? Right. Where like, there is a real amount of time and energy and lift to do this stuff. What I think is going to happen is they're going to try to schedule 10 showings in a 2-week period and want to pull their hair out. They're going to attempt to go to some showings on a weekend and get outbid because there's 17 offers. And eventually at some point in that process, you know, the partners are going to have a conversation and go, yeah, why don't we call your friend from college or my friend from, you know, spouse from work and sit down with a professional. And again, I'm going back to statistics, right? A seller, according to NAR, takes like 30 hours to do a listing side. That's why you and I spent 80% of our time with sellers. A buyer's like 80 to 100 hours. It's actually to be a buyer's agent from a time energy investment. And so my guess, and this is an educated guess on today's date and time that, you know, I said earlier, where I could be proven wrong. But my guess is sellers, buyers who attempt to go unrepresented will end up hiring an agent at equal to or greater rates than for sale by owners who attempt to sell their homes themselves. And again, wild ass guess on today's date, 6 months from now, I get to be right around. Okay.
Yeah, I think I think it's accurate. It's proven out by data, and they're basically like FSBO buyers. I'm wondering, how do you see this affecting? Because you have this like 30,000-foot view. How do you see it affecting like the brokerage business? Because I know brokerage is macro of like the micro. So how do you see it
before I answer that question, because it's important, especially some of the comments I'm seeing. But what everyone needs to remember is at the end of the day, 4 to 5 million American families are going to choose to move next year. And it happens because of human condition. We fall in love. We make little people. We need more space. We need less space. Death, divorce, and a couple of promotions along the way dictate the vast majority of moves. They are not, hey, rates kind of feel perfect. Let's move this week. No, it's like, we ran out of room. We have too much room. I can't afford this. I need more space. I got a promotion. I got to move across the country. Right? At that decision point, people either buy or rent based on the affordability and the inventory supply. That's actually statistically how it is. So I kind of bring everybody back and say, at the end of the day, do you still want to help families in this noble profession that I love so deeply? If the answer is yes, here's the new rule set. How you actually apply the rules and build a business is actually up to you. Like these are this is my third rail. This is, you know, stay within these guidelines and I will do everything to support you. But I think, again, 12 months from now, when we talk to an agent who just got their license, they go, you used to do what? You used to put a buyer in your car without a buyer representative? That seems insane. Like, you didn't even know if you were going to get paid or how you were going to get paid or what was going to happen. It's crazy town. But to your question, I think the brokerage business will be drastically differently, purely from what I'm witnessing, right? Over the last 90 days, it's a tale of two worlds, right? There's the me's who are very loud, and there's a handful of us, of ladies and gentlemen who are standing up and saying things what they believe. And there's a whole bunch who are under their bed scared saying, we'll wait and see. And my guess is that the wait and see camp are going to wait too long. And we're the ones who are moving forward and attempting, because that's all it is. Like, we're attempting to implement the best practices we can have. But my promise to you guys is I'll iterate as fast as possible. If I have new information, we screwed something up, I'll improve it, I'll fix it, I'll amend it, I'll change my policy. But pretending that it's just wait and see, like just so we're clear for everybody, I did not have a choice. We operate in 50 states. You know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, when I realized that half the states we operate in hadn't given us anything and the other half had given us stuff that kind of looked exactly what we got sued for, I was like, all right, we're in the forms business.
You know, you just did it from a like protecting both parties, which is like really true leadership. And I also know that from the brokerage industry, like they're dealing with these multiple different issues simultaneously. One is like, I read a statistic from Michael Del Prete that net, like company retained dollars dropped from 50% 50 years ago to like 5, 8, 10% today. They're also dealing with market conditions where, you know, volumes dropped from 6 million to let's say 4 million. And now perhaps like dealing with revenue, and they only have a handful of choices, right? One is to sell, two is to try to merge to get to ancillary services, and three is to get rid of all of the expenses. And that's what we do, you know, with cloud-based brokerage. So I guess for you, and this will be our final question because I want to be respectful of your time, what do you expect the biggest change to be in 2025? As we move through this, we get through the messy middle, like what do you see happening in 2025?
So I got lots and lots of thoughts about this. And, you know, in leadership, I encourage people to live in the cloud and the dirt. And that's a Gary Vee quote, right? There's the stuff I'm working on for 36 months from now. Like there's the stuff that you're now seeing live at, like, you know, real-time rev share and real-time payments on commissions. That was an 18-month ago all-in decision I made on tech, on like prioritization of what you guys get delivered. And I was like, I want that before I get anything else, because I've been an agent, and at the end of the day, we're a brokerage. And I think that's where, you know, I get right back to the dirt and what it's like to be in your shoes every single day. And I want to pay you as fast as humanly possible. I want to answer your broker support questions as quickly as possible without transferring you, right? Like first level support, 24/7 agent help desk, like that's my obsession. But I think we have all kinds of possibilities, right? Like if you throw it all out there, I think NAR looks very different. I think associations look different. I think MLSs look different. What they look like, I can't predict. But what I know is we're all patiently and carefully watching everything. And it's all about the value proposition, right? Like our goal is to support you guys as entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream you want. And that includes giving you best-in-class tools, from the actual buyer presentation, the scripts that we're seeing work in certain markets and sharing them because we have this awesome platform at scale, preparing you so you guys are best equipped to handle market dynamics. If we're seeing consumer sentiment go the same way, we're sharing it all in real time. But what I do know, and this is how I stay myself very, very calm, is families are going to move. They're going to need your help. Right? The lowest transactional count we've seen in the last 30, 40 years is 4 million. The most is 7 million. It is a math problem between supply, demand, and affordability based on interest rate. If you can remember that, it always will make you take a breath and just know that consumers need professional guidance. And I've said this analogy from many stages, which is we are the Sherpa, right? Today, Aaron, if you want to choose to climb Mount Everest, you can get ready from home. You can go to YouTube. You can watch all the videos on the workout you need to do, the diet you need to have, the gear you need to buy. But when you get to the base of the Himalayas, I highly suggest you hire the local expert who's done it 400 times, who can carry your gear and point out what is a big deal or not a big deal and calm you down. Because if you don't, it's catastrophic. Right. And I don't want to fear monger, but I really, not having an agent, like the statistical data on what a seller leaves on the table by going for sale by owner far exceeds the statistical fee paid to agents. Right. Like there's just basic math problems here. We don't attempt to do our own taxes. We don't attempt to, fix our car. Like there are segments of the population that require expert guidance. And again, the very loud consumers who on the same forums have been quite angry as well. It's like, listen, if in the last 10 years, there's been over $50 billion worth of very smart capital to get rid of us. And most of those companies are either gone or have done a full pivot to partner with agents to service the last mile of the transaction because it's necessary.
And I love what you're saying because it makes me think, like in a truly open market, the analogy I've been given to people is like an airplane where there's all these variations on the airplane. And I ask people a question like, how many times have you been to first class and it's been empty when you get on an airplane? The answer is never. It's like, why? They could sit in the back and pay like Spirit prices and like what? And does anybody freak out about that? No, because in a truly open marketplace, some people value time, they value convenience, they value speed. They want to be the first on and the first off, right?
I was going to say, for me, like 1A means I get to my meeting faster get to kiss my wife and kids.
Exactly. And when you're given those two options, you're thinking time and you're like, yeah, that's fine with me. Right. So I think the net positive, it's a net positive, not only for the industry, right? Because it forces us to level up in terms of like value and all that other stuff, but it's also a net positive to the consumer because they get a better agent.
But yes, so the one of the outcomes is that the agents who choose not to level up their skill are not going to make it. And I say that with empathy. And I just spoke at a 250 person event on Monday, like the Monday after the settlement went into effect. And it was a tale of two cities psychologically. I had agents rush up to me and go, one of them was one of the more interesting conversations. And she said, like, I still didn't like internalize this till Friday, but I locked myself in a room. I listened to all your words and I memorized them. And I went through listing appointments and I crushed it. And this is awesome. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And another one came up to me and it was, the sky is falling. It was that blue character from Inside Out. Like, it didn't matter what I said, the world is over. And I could already see in her eyes, she's already made the decision that she won't be in this industry in 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So much of this game happens between our 2 years. And so that you make a decision that you're going to make it or you're not going to make it. And you're right either way.
And what I know to be true is that, like, Darwin will tell us, it's not the fastest, not the quickest, not the strongest, not the prettiest. It's the ones that are most responsive to change. So if you add value and you're able to pivot and change, like, you will get your lion's share, your unfair share, which is what we want. And I do believe that in the future, the agents will be vertically integrated. So they'll be rock star salespeople, not order takers. They will be vertically integrated in the sense that they have multiple ways of getting compensated to make up for any compression that happens in professional fees. And, they'll also understand media pretty well, because what I have come to learn is that, if you don't know me, you can't flow me, sort of thing. So the more attention I get, it preserves my pricing power. If I'm known in my geographic area as the hyperlocal expert who helps a lot of people and is honest and has integrity, when you're in either a listing presentation or sitting down at a buyer broker's presentation and you talk about professional fees, it's much more palatable and it's much more easier to demonstrate value. Yeah. So I'm super appreciative, man. I am appreciative of your leadership. Like, I see what you're doing and I know you don't have to do it. I'm pretty sure you're at a place in your life where if you chose to, you wouldn't have to, be flying around the country and doing everything that you're doing. I'm proud to be in business with you and look forward to continuing to grow this thing together.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. And the last thought I'll leave it with was the broker one. Like, the tale of two cities is happening at the brokerage level. And, I can't stress it enough as much empathy as you can. Because just like I'm seeing some really cool comments about our brokers, which, by the way, I spend a lot of time with and I pour into all the time because they are the ones getting the brunt of this. There's a lot of agents on the other side where they're getting nothing. And I know this because they're texting me directly. Friends of mine who are still at other brands not wearing our jersey. And it's just candidly, like, it's not even a time where I give them crap about it, right? I'm like, how can I help you? Like, here's a link to all of our, because, pre-settlement, I would joke with them, be like, put on my jersey and I'll answer your questions. But right now I'm just giving all of our links, everything we can, giving them as much as we can, because I do have a ton of empathy, because I'm talking about big brands where, high-end brands where they're like, I can't even get my broker to call me. I'm literally just grabbing whatever I can off YouTube from you. Right. So, and I also prepare you guys that you guys haven't seen the carnage that will come from that in 6 to 12 months on the broker side. Like, I prepare you guys all for a moment in time next March, next April, where, 38 person local franchisee, they get there and the doors are locked and they got to find somewhere to hang their license within 24 hours.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it from like a pure attraction standpoint. I'm saying, like, have a ton of empathy, because it's going to be painful for a lot of people's families, the people who aren't shifting fast enough. And like you said, there's going to be pressure on the models. And if you listen to, the last 8 earning calls I've been talking about this, like, I'm very transparent. Like, listen to our last earnings call. Before this all happened, I was speaking about this. So we are ready. I can't predict the future, but I do know I can shift faster than anybody else.
That's what's up. So that's what we're going to continue to do here. Appreciate you, brother, and look forward to connecting soon.
Awesome. Take care.
An unlit lamp is no good for 2 reasons. One is that it can't provide light. Second is it can't light other lamps. A lit lamp, though, is very valuable. And the reason why it's so valuable